You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation providing strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing. And now, here are your hosts, Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli.
Well, good morning, Sig. How you doing today?
Well, I'm wonderful. It's another beautiful Friday morning. Couldn't think of spending it another way than with my good friend, Lindsay Kelly.
I know. What a way to start a Friday.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm coming to you live from DC, the DC area. I spoke at a conference yesterday for some fine folks, and I love that Sig asked me, "What'd you talk about?" I'm like, "What do you think I talked about?" Same thing I always talk about. So, and
purchasing cold lists.
That's
Best way
right.
to do it.
It's all about purchasing cold lists.
Yeah.
So, no, it was a great group. We talked about how sales and marketing has changed. Some of this stuff was a little new for some of the folks in the room, and other people were nodding their head like, "Yeah, we have the same problem," and they got it. So it was good. And part of what I talked about was getting found online and answering questions, and the 70% of the buying process that's already complete before they ever get to the sales rep. And the funny thing was, and you and I talk about the 70% a lot, that was a huge slap in the face for these guys. 70%? Like they weren't aware of just, I mean, some were, but most of them were like, wow, that number is really scary. That our sales reps have lost that much control of our buying cycle. So it was interesting because I was able to show the inbound methodology and the for the sales and the marketing side, show where like attract, convert, close, and delight matched up with, and I'll get these wrong. What are yours? Like something, advise, connect.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I identify, connect, explore, advise.
Right. So I was able to put those together and then show like the awareness, consideration, decision, how they all flow together, the type of content that needs to be available in all the different stages so these guys can make a cohesive journey through your digital buyer's journey. And one of the things that we touched on was what Marcus Sheridan, who is an inbound, I guess you could say, evangelist and speaker and teacher and world traveler. He recently wrote a book called They Ask You Answer. It's really good. I'm halfway through it. And he talks about the big five. And so that's what I wanted to kind of touch on today, because they're the main search subjects that your prospects are searching when they go to Google or Bing or Yahoo or YouTube. We talked about YouTube yesterday a little bit. And kind of what types of questions you have for folks there. And then just coincidentally, you were saying you had an idea for talking today, and you were like, hey, what about like looking things up on Quora? And I was like, hey, wait, I'm going to talk about questions. So it was like we were so yin and yangy today.
Exactly. It was like a telepathic connection of like, hey, I've got the questions, we can look at some questions. But yeah, well, I think it might be an interesting source of, because don't get me wrong, love everyone who's, subscribed to the podcast and everything. But I don't think we've had a bunch of questions. There's a dog right behind me there.
Hi, sweetness. Cute dog.
We haven't had a bunch of questions come in, I don't think, on feedback for, different topics to cover quite yet.
Yeah.
We're only in the first couple of months, early innings, as our CEO, Brian Halligan, would say. Been in the early innings for the last 10 years now. But still early innings of this podcast, at least in the first few months. So until those questions come in, we will find a well of information to draw from. So I love the idea. And I actually have read not as much of Marcus's book as you, but I did download it, I think, just through my Kindle. And I read the intro or the first chapter, and it was just so interesting. I don't think I've ever actually, I was aware of Marcus's story, but when you read it in his own words about, how he was running such a small business and that it was basically failing, and how he kind of found a different way to market and to sell, and to see what he's done with it since then over the past, I guess, what is it now? Is it 10 years or
somewhere close to that?
Something a little bit less than that, maybe like 6 or 7 years. But it's been amazing to see what he's done for himself and how he's kind of transformed, not only from practitioner of inbound marketing and sales, but kind of prolific teacher to all people about inbound sales and marketing. So it's very cool.
I do love that.
Excited to give him an homage today.
Yeah, and he's an awesome guy too. I mean, just like an all-around good human, and he's all about teaching, and he wants people to feel knowledgeable when they're coming in and engaging them for an inbound marketing workshop or whatever it might be. So they're very helpful. They have a lot of questions that are answered in many different forms, and we'll talk about some of the different forms that you can sort of present the answers to these questions in as well if we have time. I have to check out in 45 minutes, so let's see how we do.
All right, so
this is obviously I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, which is oh so awesome. And
it's been improving since you've been on, actually, because it was pretty staticky at first, but it's pretty crystal clear now. At least, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh dear. So, so the big five, they're the main subjects that your folks are out there searching for, your prospects, and the five different ones are the following: they're cost, price, problems and issues, versus comparisons, review-based, and best of. And I want to touch a little bit on each one because I thought, what Sig you could do is maybe we can relate this to, and this is totally on the fly, and I'm putting us both on the spot right now. Yeah. But let's see if you can Google some of these questions about office technology dealerships, as well as maybe even sales and marketing, because you were doing sales and marketing before, and
Absolutely.
You're getting some interesting results. So I want to go the copier route right now, the office technology route, and I want to say, so cost price questions. So how much does something cost? That's everybody wants to know. I'm sorry, but most people are like, oh, you can't put price out there. And then what happens when you can't find a price on something? You're like, God, I just want to know, like, am I talking about $50 a month, $1,000 a month? Like, what am I looking at? Give me a ballpark. Give me an idea. And you get frustrated as a searcher if you don't have that answer. And I get so much pushback. So if you type in how much does a copier cost, or something to that effect, what do you get?
That's just what I searched right now.
That's right, yin and yang right here, same wavelength.
That's right, exactly. We're just flowing this morning, right? So what's interesting is actually the very first thing that comes up, or that stood out to me, is that on the right hand side, all the Google shopping ads came up on the right hand side, right? And I can quickly see. So I typed in exactly just free form text, not an exact search with a quote at the beginning. I didn't put a quote at the beginning and the end. I just did it free form. For how much does a copier cost? And I can get a quick scan and see that it looks like, cost of a copier ranges anywhere from, at least in these Google shopping results, low end of like $600 to high end of $3,900.
Okay.
Something like that, right? So that's one. And then the next thing I see, which is interesting, I don't know if, maybe you know this business. I certainly don't. I'm not in the industry. But the number one result organically that came up was from a company called ABP Copy, where they've actually, got that bit in Google. And I don't know what the exact terminology is for it, but it's like
the answer box.
The answer box, exactly. And it's right here where they say, how much does it cost to lease a copier? And then it goes on to describe, how most businesses pay this to this for a multifunction copy machine. And the answer is $100 to $650 a month to lease a multifunction copy machine. Is that right from your experience?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is. And that's what people are so scared to answer that question. But what they don't understand is there are other companies out there that are not copier dealers that are trying to get this business, whether it's a Staples or your direct manufacturers. They answer the question. So no, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself and say a copier costs $7,500. And then you show up to the client and they want something that's actually $12,500 because of all the things. So you need to answer that question, but don't get me wrong, you don't have to sit there and give the exact number. You can say, look, if you're a small business, this is what you can expect. You can expect something between this and this is what the functionality is going to be. This is what it's going to be able to do for your business. You have to find ways to answer that question. And every single client I work with right now is like, we can't answer that question. Like, no, we're not putting that up there because it'll bite us in the tush. And I want people to see like the answers are already there. So you have to be able to go in and address it before your people come in and say, oh, well, I can get a copier between 600 and 3,900 according to this over here. So why is yours 7,000?
That's
Answer
right.
that question up front online, and you will earn their trust and win. They'll understand. It's kind of like, it's exactly like a car, okay? You've got your base model, you've got your XLT. I'm talking about the Explorer because we just bought one. Your base model, your XLT, which is what we ended up in. The Limited, the Platinum, the King Ranch. There's all these different packages. It's no different with a copier. Like if you only need this machine to be a basic machine, then yeah, you're looking at about this. But if you want the complexity or the bells and whistles of, the King Ranch, version of a F-150 or whatever. I think they only do that for the bigger truck things. But that's the sweet one where you were like, whoa, this will do everything I need it to do. And you have to explain that. So why are we not answering these questions? It's just painful.
One thing that's interesting is actually in the it's so timely. I think that we're talking about price first or the cost question, right? And it's just so interesting to me that it seems like no matter which industry you're in, this seems to hold true. That in the 2016 State of Inbound survey that HubSpot runs every year, it's just an annual report on like the state of inbound marketing and sales. For anyone who hasn't heard of it before, just go to stateofinbound.com if you want to check it out. But one of the most interesting that came out of that is basically there was a survey, there was a specific question within the survey where it asked buyers and sellers what they wanted to talk about in the very first call that they had together. And buyers I think it was something like 80% of the time wanted to talk about price or costs. And sellers basically didn't want to talk about that at all, ever, right? And so this is one of those things that this is just, I think to your point, Lindsay, look, if you aren't answering this question online, if you aren't giving your